Welcome to WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's a 2 for Tuesday. This is our second stream. And, man, you would think that nothing could get me more wound up than Donald Trump. But oh no, there is a member of the House Education and Workforce Committee named Virginia Foxx. She's got me the most wound up today. We're going to get into that in a little bit. We're going to be talking about a new lawsuit against Fox, now by one of its own employees, having to do with the very strategy Donald Trump and other criminals use to keep their henchmen in line, which is pressure from attorneys they have provided. We're going to talk about the New York handling of Donald Trump's indictment and whether or not it was proper. I'll just give you the spoiler right now. Yes, it was, but why is important. The history, incomplete though it is, because we have not done proper investigations, but the history of GOP treason, brought to you by Tom Hartman. Fantastic piece he did. I'm just sharing it and applauding as well. A 4-day work week is possible in the United States of America. We are already at the point of bills being introduced about it. But for certain members of Congress, and then the GOP mentality summed up beautifully in a short by Brian Tyler Cohen talking about sausage. It's going to be a fun show. Delighted to have you tonight on this 2 for Tuesday. Why don't we dive right in? So, Fox is going to get sued once more. This time, the source of it is their own employees. Let's have a look at the article. Brought to us by our friends at The Guardian, Fox News producer accuses network of coercive coaching in Dominion case. That, folks, is a crime, for the record. Let's see if it gets charged as such. Go ahead and break the Guardian's heart. All right. Article, by the way, by Adam Gavitt. A Fox News producer who worked on Tucker Carlson's flagship show has claimed in a pair of lawsuits that network lawyers coached and intimidated her into giving misleading testimony in the $1.6 billion Dominion Voting Systems lawsuit. Abby Grossberg, a senior producer and head of booking for Tucker Carlson, who has also worked on Maria Bartiromo's show, alleged that the network attempted to pin the blame for Fox News' airing of voting conspiracies on her and Bartiromo, an effort that Grossberg says was part of a broader culture of sexism and misogyny at Fox News. Not even in defense of Fox News. I will say, Bartiromo leaned real hard into the Dominion stuff. But you cannot blame the people in front of the camera for what they said the second time. The first time, sure. But the second time, they didn't get fired. The third time, the fourth time, it's not the employees, it is the bosses, even if I despise everyone in this article, which I do. The lawsuit was first revealed by Daily Beast's Confider newsletter. Okay, great plug, Daily Beast, for the Daily Beast, which reported that Fox News filed a countersuit on Monday seeking a restraining order to prevent Grossberg from revealing conversations she had with network lawyers. In her lawsuits filed in Delaware and New York, Grossberg accused Fox News attorneys of coaching her in a coercive and intimidating manner before her deposition in the Dominion case. Do you recall? Who is that gal that gave the wonderful January 6th testimony? Let's see. January 6th, key witness. Can't remember her name. Cassidy Hutchinson. That's right. Do you remember how Cassidy Hutchinson was treated? Do you remember the situation she was put in? Cassidy Hutchinson, just like this lawsuit with Fox News, was provided with a lawyer by her employer. That employer had the lawyer ask her to essentially take the fall, ask her to do illegal things to cover for them. This is no different. This is something the mob does. We need to, first and foremost, insist that our Justice Department get to goddamn work. More on that in a moment. In an interview with the New York Times on Monday evening, Grossberg, this is the producer for Tucker Carlson and Maria Bartiromo, said the lawyers had given her the impression that she should avoid mentioning senior Fox executives and Fox News' on-air hosts to protect them from any blame, while putting her own reputation at risk. That's what the culture is there, Grossberg told Times. They don't respect or value women. Well, that's not a surprise. Grossberg said in her lawsuits that bosses at Fox referred to Bartiromo as a crazy bitch, who was menopausal. She said she was told to cut Bartiromo out of coverage discussions. Grossberg further alleged a culture of misogyny behind the scenes on Carlson's show, where she began working last year. On her first full day, according to the lawsuit, Grossberg discovered that the show's Manhattan workspace was decorated with large pictures of Representative Nancy Pelosi of California, then the House Speaker, wearing a plunging swimsuit, the Times reported. I think that was a reference to Major League, but it'd be weird for them to expect anybody under 40 to get that. Carlson's staff repeatedly made jokes about Jews, Jesus Christ, according to Grossberg's lawsuit, and held discussions about which female politicians they would rather have sex with. Classy folks. After Grossberg complained about the behavior, she was called into a human resources meeting and told she was not performing her duties, she said in a statement. All right. I'm going to go ahead and be upfront that this is literally one side to the story. But man, I gotta say, if I'm just being real with you, that is exactly how I imagine Fox operating. Exactly. In a statement, a Fox spokesperson said, so here's the other side. Fox News Media engaged an independent outside counsel to immediately investigate the concerns raised by Ms. Grossberg, independent, I'm sure, which were made following a critical performance review. Her allegations in connection with the Dominion case are baseless, and we will vigorously defend Fox against all of her claims. They added, Ms. Grossberg has threatened to disclose Fox's attorney-client privileged information, and we have filed a temporary restraining order to protect our rights. Wow. So, yeah, this isn't a surprise. It's entirely possible that America won't even have the attention span to ensure that this gets followed up on. One thing we have learned, the Department of Justice will not go after powerful people of their own volition. That's when I started calling America an oligarchy, was when I realized that the Department of Justice had to be pushed to actually seek justice against anyone who was wealthy. That is pretty much what an oligarchy is. I don't think, unfortunately, that there is going to be the sympathy for this person, the desire to see justice done on this specific thing against Fox. If these allegations turn out to be true, I don't think it's there. Not because it shouldn't be pursued, but because there is literally so much going on right now that I think this will disappear. And that sucks because this person is living the experiences of the proletariat, I guess. They are living through the kind of harassment, the kind of they're being used by this company in the most blatant of ways. If what she says is true, disrespected and used. And I'm always on the side of the worker. By default, I am on the side of the worker. And I would like to see justice done in this manner. I should say. So what can you do? I'm not entirely sure that you can pile on Fox for this, motivate anyone in particular. I think I got to be honest with you about where you can best spend your efforts. And I'm not sure that even writing the Department of Justice and saying, are you looking into this, will get something done. What I am sure of is that you can prevent your news organizations, your media outlets of choice from becoming Fox News. Look at CNN. CNN is slowly but surely creeping their way over to the Fox side of things. They're getting more blatant with their skewing of the stories they have to tell in favor of right-wingers. They're inviting John freaking Bolton on. You can stop that from happening, not by boycotting them, but by doing the opposite. Writing in when your media network of choice disappoints you and letting them know how they've disappointed you. That includes me. In fact, I encourage it so often because my worst nightmare is to wake up one day and realize that I'm Fox News. No, okay, my worst nightmare is to wake up and realize that I'm Fox News without the money. But general principle is the same. A good media organization should welcome the criticism. And they should respond to it if it's fair criticism. Keep your media organizations on their toes. And try to remember this. Try to remember there's a lawsuit from a Fox producer. I'll let you know. I'll keep my eyes open. If it settles, I'll tell you. If it actually goes to court, I'll tell you. I do think that we are going to enter an era where one of two things will occur. Either we give up, we lose to the right-wingers of this, not even right-wingers, the whatever the GOP has metastasized into, we lose to that. In which case, it would be every bit as bad as you can imagine. It would be a cultish, just a religious, a theocracy. But what's that religion where the wealth itself is praised? A prosperity gospel. There we go. It'll be a prosperity gospel theocracy. Then there's the other way. The other way is we actually enforce the law as written on the books. Now, I'll tell you, if we only go after those that absolutely, positively can't be ignored, because otherwise they'll get other headlines that remind you that they're not currently in prison, like Donald Trump, for example. If we only go after those people, then it's still going to be a theocracy of the prosperity gospel. But about 5-10 years down the line, maybe, let's say 15, give a couple administrations in there. It's not going to stop it, though, because all that will teach America's worst criminal class, all that will teach them is that they need to be just a little more subtle. So that won't be sufficient. We're going to have to get everyone who breaks the law, at least make an honest effort to get everyone who breaks the law. When that happens, I promise you, if that happens, God willing, that will happen. And when it does, if it does, I promise you that GOP will start calling it McCarthyism. They'll literally say it's a witch hunt. They've already been doing that. They'll start saying this is the Red Scare all over again. I just want you to brace for that right now. And be reminded of this. This Fox suit, be reminded of it. Here's somebody who you might never hear about again. It doesn't mean they didn't suffer. Here's somebody who you might not like. Oh, there we go. Who you might not like. Doesn't mean they weren't wronged. We got to get Trump out of the way fast. That's true. But we have to develop a taste for justice, an addiction to justice. And we have to keep insisting, and we have to keep lighting the fire under the Department of Justice, their butts, until we start actually seeing these people taken seriously as the criminals they are. Speaking of which, we do have just a lovely case that we're going to have a gander at. And this is the case. Donald Trump in New York. Yeah, we've been hearing about it all day. But, ooh, boy, did I hear a couple of things on the cable news that Bo of the Fifth Column addressed, and I would like to underline and applaud him for talking about. Here it is.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we are going to talk about whether or not New York is doing it wrong when it comes to former President Trump. There have been a number of people who have suggested that New York should have waited. They should have gone last because, relatively speaking, what New York is looking at Trump for, well, it's kind of minor in comparison.
Just for the record, you probably already know my opinion. It does not matter what order somebody goes in. The literally only thing because then they're talking about politics again, and that's not their business. Literally the only thing I want prosecutors factoring in, did the crime happen, or did the thing happen? Was it illegal? As soon as they can prove that, as soon as they feel they can prove that, charge it. That's the timeline. ASAP is the timeline. Every single time. Be sure you can prove it, but do it quickly and don't wait for nothing. That said, Bo makes a really interesting point here. Let's listen to him.
To the other jurisdictions. So there are those who suggest that they should have waited. Should have started off with, a big case and then dealt with the little stuff. I disagree, actually. I disagree. First thing I want to say is I don't think there's that level of coordination. I don't think that the prosecutors are coordinating their events with each other. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that they talk to each other, but these are different jurisdictions with different political and legal realities. I don't think they're coordinating like that. But if I could pick, like if somebody said, hey, you determine the order in which they go, I would have started with New York. I would have started with New York because it's relatively minor in comparison. You know, you look at Trump's calls for people to get out there and support him and say his name and all that stuff. Those calls, there aren't a lot of people picking up the phone right now. And I think it's because it is relatively minor.
I had not considered that. The benefit of starting with a minor case. I still want to be clear. I don't think that should factor in. If it happens to be beneficial to the political atmosphere, good. I don't think it should be a factor. I don't think it was a factor. But that's good. What he's saying, easing them in, easing these people who have been told Trump did nothing wrong at all into the idea that maybe he lied to you is fantastic in terms of how that works out. Because this one isn't, it's not leading with overturning the 2020 election. And I just a tiny little bit think maybe Fani Willis dragged her feet a little bit. But as far as like an actual phone call coordination, I don't think so. Not that they couldn't. I have no idea whether that's appropriate or not. I have no sense of that. Purely guessing. But the benefit here is, as he says, easing into the idea. They find out he lied about this so that down the line, let's say 2 months later or whatever, they can find out, oh, and he lied about that. Oh, and then he lied about that. Oh, and he lied about that. And then let the dam break.
I think it's because people are looking at it and being like, well, this isn't a big deal. And this is that little thing, it doesn't matter. So people aren't getting as energized over it. At least not yet. And I think a slow kind of descent into reality is probably a good thing. It gives people time to get acclimated to it. If it was me, it would be New York, then Georgia, then any federal cases. But that's simply to assist his supporters, really. Those people who might be very angry, those people who may not have come to terms with how they might have been misled. If it moves from a smaller thing to a larger thing, it gives them time to adjust and hopefully might stop them from doing something they'd regret. But again, I really don't think there's that level of coordination. I don't think it's happening like that. I don't think that the prosecutors are talking to each other and trying to decide who goes first or anything like that. I don't think that's happening at all. They may be keeping each other up to date in the sense of, this is what we're doing right now, this is what we're doing. But I don't even know that that's happening.
Gonna pause for one moment for Wireless Mike, who is watching this very slightly in the past at double speed, and I'm gonna pause to say, chickadee China, the Chinese chicken, eat a drumstick and your brain starts ticking. Watching X-Files with no lights on, you get it. Let's continue. He's about to wrap up.
I would remind everybody that there are a lot of steps in the legal system, and how long each step takes, I mean, that's up to how many motions get filed, what judges say. It's really hard to kind of coordinate like that. Even if the prosecutors wanted to, the legal systems in the various jurisdictions really wouldn't let them. I think they're all moving as fast as their jurisdiction allows, and the evidence, and following where the evidence leads them. And in some cases, it may take them down a side path. But I think that starting with the relatively minor stuff in New York is probably a really good thing for his supporters.
I got to agree. No notes to Bo. None. I hadn't considered that, if I'm being honest with you. I hadn't considered the benefit to the order in which these are coming out. And I also agree. I don't think it was intentional. For example, Michael Cohen just had to go back to court again to clarify this or that. It was Monday. I don't think they're capable of coordinating it. But that said, the order it's coming out in gives me a sense of relief about how this might play out. So what can you do? Well, Franny P in the comments asked, how do we make the Justice Department do something? Flashlight tag is it. If they know you see them, they get nervous. The threat for an attorney general is that a protest might happen, demanding that they get fired. A president can't just say, I don't like my attorney general because they're not going after the people I don't like. That's corrupt. But a president can certainly say, I've got my constituents in the streets saying I made a bad call in appointing this guy. They don't want their reputation tarnished either. They're subject to all the same pressures we are. Just imagine it's your job and there was people outside of your door holding signs saying you did a bad job. That works. And ramping up to that are the emails, are the letters, are the phone calls. There is a form that I often include in these streams to contact the Department of Justice. And in this stream, I have included forms to contact the Department of Justice in each state where there is no state elector case, where the Department of Justice at the state level is failing to do its job. They are allowing Merrick Garland's sleepy ass to handle the entirety of the investigation into the attempts to overturn the 2020 election. Those states are Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. If you are from one of those states, contact your attorney general using the link in the description and tell them, I even included a script if you'd like, but tell them from the heart that you expect them to do their job. There is nothing that stops a state-level investigation from running concurrently with a federal investigation. To prove that, the Attorney General in Michigan has restarted an investigation at the state level into the false elector schemes. What is the benefit of running a state-level investigation concurrent with the federal? Well, there's a couple. Number one, look what's happening with Fani Willis. With state-level resources, with county-level resources, she is already on the precipice, it would appear, of getting an indictment. How embarrassing is that for Merrick Garland, who had federal resources. If Dana Nessel beats Merrick Garland to the punch, that makes him look like even more of a clown. More benefit. Merrick Garland has free reign over how ambitious he wants to be. Ask yourself honestly, would you choose to work 14-hour days instead of 12-hour days in order to get an extra 5 or 6 people per state when it's not going to be in any of the headlines? All the entirety of your work will be represented by one column, one table that's just a list of names saying, in addition to Trump, these people were charged. Apparently, Merrick Garland won't, because he's having trouble even charging Trump. However, at the state level, they can pour through all the people within just your state that broke the law. They have the patience, the resources, and the motivation. And your voice will mean a lot more to your attorney general than it will to the attorney general, who has your voice and the voices from 49 other states to appease, half of which are going to be Trump supporters hooting and hollering. So what can you do? You can contact your state attorney general if you're in Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin. You can contact them and say, open up that investigation. By the way, Chris Mays in Arizona, she's right on the verge. She was on national television talking about I might. But I haven't heard a peep since then. Motivator. But in answer to your question, Franny P., the long story summed up, made short. Contacting them works. These are all Justice Department officials who grew up in eras where Americans straight up did not pay attention to politics, and certainly did not pay attention to what their attorney generals were up to. Not in any significant way. And it scares the hell out of them when they see you seeing them. Use it. Motivate. There are additional steps we can take, such as getting our politicians to call them out, saying we want to hear that rhetoric from our politicians. But let's start with the emails, the direct contact, because we have the most control over that message then. And it's one I think they need to hear. What to do about the New York handling of Trump? They're fine. They're good. Lawrence St. Laurent saying Biden firing Garland for that would be acting like Trump. Exactly. You can't do it. And nor should he. However, if there was a mass protest in the street, like 6,000 people marched through New York saying fire Merrick Garland, that might be different. I don't suggest we do that. I'm just saying the context of a firing is very important there. It can't be motivated by Biden wanting to do Garland's job. Wireless Mike 73 says LMAO. I just got to the bare naked ladies bit. Good one, Jake. I needed that. My pleasure, my friend. Lord St. Laurent. Okay, but the DOJ is working on plenty of stuff. True. Honestly, this is not a week where I am genuinely very angry at the DOJ. I'm not. I will say, though, that I note that it's all state level stuff. It is all the state that has done things. But that said, there are hints that there's a RICO case happening federally, so I'm going to cool it. Plus, I'm sure there's Trump supporters within DOJ, 100%. Oh, my God, yes. Foxy Dragon says, hi, everyone. What have I missed? Nothing. We were just we were playing a shit. I forgot the name of that party game that you play over the internet. I missed it. You'll see in the VOD. It's fine. Okay. Boy, howdy. I told you at the top of the stream, here's what you missed. I said at the top of the stream that there was somebody right now that I am more annoyed with than Donald Trump. It could just be, in fact it is, just because I am now sure that comeuppance of some kind are coming, and I'm riding that high when I think about Trump. This person, no comeuppance are coming, and oh, they twisted the knife. Here is oh shoot. Here is a 4-day work week being pitched by a lady on the education committee, except Jake just realized live on stream that he skipped over the other thing. Let's pause. We're going to come back to that later. There is absolutely a 4-day work week story I want to talk about, and I'm champing at the bit. But I just realized I really want to show you guys the Tom Hartman thing. New intro. Sorry, editing Jake. Tom Hartman recently discussed what we have been talking about on this channel forever. Nixon, Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, Donald Trump. How many times have I ranted about the fact that these dudes all committed crimes to get in office, and well, they were in office? A whole lot. Now, a guy that's actually published some books said it too. And he said it, informing me of news I was not aware of over the weekend, because I also, like everyone else, was obsessing over Trump. Here's Tom Hartman. Hit him, Tom.
The bombshell story of the weekend, which I'm just amazed. I watched the news this morning. I watched, probably 30, 40 minutes of Scarborough's show and caught MSNBC for a while. Listened to NPR while I was taking a shower and all that normal stuff, and didn't hear a single mention of this. Now, maybe it happened and I just didn't catch it, but over the weekend in the New York Times, it was reported that this guy who his name is Ben Barnes. He was the former Speaker of the House in Texas, and the Lieutenant Governor of that state. No shrinking violet, and this big deal guy. He and John Connally traveled around the Middle East right in the middle of 1980. On behalf of Ronald Reagan, to convince the Ayatollahs to hang on to the Ayatollah Khomeini, to hang on to the hostages. I mean, this was in the New York Times on Saturday. And, I've been telling you about this for years. I mean, Bonnie Sauter, President Bonnie Sauter, who was president of Iran at the time that this happened, came to the United States. He just died last year here in the United States. He came to the United States and got a gig as a visiting professor at Northeastern College, one of the colleges up in the Northeast. And he gave an interview to the Christian Science Monitor, in which he just, he laid it right out. He said, after arriving in France in 1981, I told a BBC reporter that I left Iran to expose the symbiotic relationship between Khomeiniism and Reaganism. Ayatollah Khomeini and Ronald Reagan had organized a clandestine negotiation, later known as the October Surprise, which prevented the attempts by myself and then U.S. President Jimmy Carter to free the hostages before the 1980 U.S. presidential election took place.
Here's something wild. I talk about politics all day, every day. Ronald Reagan is one of the people I say we should have put in prison. And I did not know that. Didn't know that. It's just out there. And if you, by the way, towards the earlier comments, if you want to know why, your old pal Jake comes off as somewhat paranoid that the Justice Department will do nothing if given the opportunity, this is why. This is why. They will do nothing if given the opportunity. being in an oligarchy means powerful people decide who gets powerful jobs. So, this is what we get. We get a Justice Department not interested in going after powerful people, particularly conservatives. Go figure. It gets much worse. Tom Hartman breaks it down.
The fact that they were not released tipped the election in favor of Reagan, end quote. That's what the president of Iran said.
And how long, as a result, president of freaking Iran confirming this, how long were those hostages there as a result of an American working to keep them there? So Ronald Reagan could be president. Yay.
I mean, this has not been a secret. That was in 2013. But here we are 10 years later. The New York Times absolutely corroborates this with the actual guy who was conveying the message, or who was accompanying John Connally, who was conveying the message.
And it's like a pin drop next to a waterfall. Because I did not hear about this until Tom Hartman talked about it. We got a lot of work to do. But, don't let that frustrate you, because we have done a lot of work already, and it looks like we're about to see some of the fruits of that labor, which is a beautiful new jailbird. Let's let him keep going.
I encourage you to read the piece in the New York Times, or you can read, there's links to it and excerpts from it at hartmanreport.com. But here's the deal. So now we know for sure that Iran-Contra, which, by the way, Bill Barr, when he was George Herbert Walker Bush's Attorney General, head of the Department of Justice, Bill Barr advised George Herbert Walker Bush when Bush was about to be indicted for this, because Lawrence Walsh was going after Bush too. He was about to leave office. This was 3 weeks before Bill Clinton was sworn in as president. He pardoned all 6 of the people who were involved with Iran-Contra that we knew about, including Caspar Weinberger and Ollie North, and that just ended the investigation. That was the full stop beginning of a cover-up that lasted right up until day before yesterday, of Reagan and Bush's involvement with Iran in screwing Jimmy Carter. Can you imagine how different the world would have been if Jimmy Carter had been president in 1980 instead of Ronald Reagan? But hey, we got Ronald Reagan.
Side note, I've been this has been swirling around the old brain for a while. As of this, I'm pretty sure, I'm convinced, not going to put together a plan for it yet, because I need to mull it over. But to let you know where I'm going and to open it up for discussion, if you've got some thoughts on this, I think we should get rid of the pardon. I don't want one person in the country to have the ability to say, nope, that's not a crime anymore. Changing the pardon? Yes. Having an ethics board, which must approve a pardon? Okay, then yes, then I'm okay with that. But the free pass on crime for your friends ability, gotta go.
So anyhow, that's kind of at the top of the news, because that was a story in the Washington Post over the weekend. But hey, that is just one of the Republican presidents who have come into office by committing treason.
Give me that breakdown,
And I use that word very carefully. Longtime listeners know that listeners to this program know that I am not, prone to hyperbole when it comes to using words like treason. But conspiring with a foreign government to hold Americans hostage for an additional year, they were hostages for 444 days, to hold American hostages hostage is, in my opinion, treason. And that's exactly what Ronald Reagan did to get himself elected in 1980. But this didn't start with Reagan. This started in 1968, In 1968, Lyndon Johnson was president. Hubert Humphrey was vice president. Richard Nixon had tried to become president in 1960 and had lost against John Kennedy. And now he had reinvented himself as the anti-war candidate. He was going to solve the Vietnam War with his secret plan.
What was that plan, Tom?
Meanwhile, throughout 68, actually started in the fall of 67, Lyndon Johnson and Hubert Humphrey had been negotiating with both the North and South Vietnamese to end the war in Vietnam. And they had finally reached an agreement. And the war was going to end in October of 1968, which would have saved 1 million Vietnamese lives and 22,000 American lives. That's the number of people who died after Nixon became president with his secret plan to end the war, which he never ended. Jerry Ford ended the war. And in the midst of this, Nixon has his people, Anna Chennault, he has his people reaching out to North and South Vietnam, particularly South Vietnam, and saying, hey, if you'll just hold off until after the election and don't do this peace deal that you've negotiated with LBJ, I'll make you rich.
Preach it, brother.
I'll give you a better deal.
Tell him, Tom.
And Lyndon Johnson, a week before the election, has finally reached the point where, you know, it's obvious Nixon's going to win because he and Humphrey couldn't end the war because Nixon had sabotaged the peace effort. And he calls up Everett Dirksen, the leader, the most powerful and influential Republican in Washington, D.C. at the time, the leader of the Republicans in the United States Senate.
But Tom, I want to believe you. Tom, I feel the spirit. I want to believe you, but Tom, I need those receipts. I got to get those receipts, Tom. Tom, give me those receipts.
The elder statesman of the United States Senate, Everett Dirksen, and says, you know, we've been wiretapping these South Vietnamese, and the FBI has it. This is treason. Well, here's the clip, actually. This is coming out of my computer here, Sean. This is Lyndon Johnson, President Lyndon Johnson, talking
Praise
to
Jesus.
talking to Everett Dirksen.
Here's the latest information we got. The agent says that they just talked to the boss in New Mexico. And that he says that you must hold out. Just hold on until after the election. We know what Chew is saying to them out there. Yeah. We're pretty well informed on both ends. Now, I'm reading their hand, Everett. I don't want to get this in the campaign. That's right. And they oughtn't to be doing this. This is treason. I know.
I know. So that's the senior statesman, the Republican statesman, Everett Dirksen, saying, yes, I know it's treason. And he tried to stop Nixon.
It ain't me saying it. It ain't Tom saying it. This is people in the 60s saying it. We need to take control of our Justice Department. I know.
In fact,
I know. It will be when we actually start regularly seeing prosecutions, when we start dragging, for example, McCarthy into court for the stunt he just pulled trying to interfere with Alvin Bragg's investigation. When this starts happening and there is immediate repercussion for crimes by the Justice Department, when this happens, we are going to get a flood of pissing and moaning from criminals. Let me tell you up front, I'm not interested in the criminal's opinion on what law enforcement ought to do. Don't care. And the cool thing is, every single time a right-wing, MAGA-believing, genuine, like QAnon follower roars, well, what about the left? Because they're not going to be able to ignore the information in court. When they say, what about the left, we'll say, deal. Find me one of mine. Find them. I'll throw their ass in court too. And if they didn't do whatever it is you say they did, okay, then they'll be fine. And if they did do what you said they did, Well, good riddance. I don't want those bad apples in my bunch. I welcome it. In other words, something that is going to be very strange for someone not getting a unreasonable search by a police officer. If they didn't do anything wrong, they've got nothing to fear. We have gone, yes, we have to have a reasonable society and blah, 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 blah. We have clearly demonstrated we don't have one with the way we've been acting. And regular enforcement of the laws that we all agreed to and said we would follow, regular enforcement, if it happens, and it will only happen with our efforts continuing as they have been. Don't feel like you got to ramp it up. What we've been doing of late has been working. But our efforts will be thrown at us with the framing that it's a witch hunt all over again. Thankfully, they didn't exactly save their powder on that. So it's going to have less rhetorical effect. But we're going to hear these arguments. And I'm just saying, brace for them. Brace for them. And know that when you hear them, that's a good sign. There's believe it or not, even more infuriating things to come.
There's another recording of LBJ 2 days later with Richard Nixon in which Nixon denies that he's doing it. And LBJ just says, come on, I'm not buying this BS. You know, you're going to inherit this war. You shouldn't be doing this. You're going to have thousands of Americans dying on your watch because of what you did to win this election. And Nixon just blows him off. We've gone through the treason of Ronald Reagan, which was, double, tripled down on this weekend by the New York Times and is being largely ignored by our media. I think it's the biggest story of the year, but what the heck. And we talked about the treason of Richard Nixon, which started this. I mean, Reagan knew that he could get away with this because Nixon got pardoned by Jerry Ford, right? When one Republican president commits treason to become president, other, future Republican presidents are going to look at that and go, hey, why not? So that takes us up to George W. Bush. George W. Bush is, running for president in 2000, and the election comes down to one state, the state that his brother is running, the state of Florida. And in Florida, George W. Bush, his brother, Jeb Bush, has his Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, purge at least 57,000 African Americans off the voting rolls just a month before the election. That George Bush, quote, wins by 537 votes in the official count.
I'm not even suggesting that it would be necessary to go this far. I just want to point out, if a regular person kills somebody as a result of committing a separate crime, that separate crime, let's say you steal a car and then you speed away. And as you're speeding away, you hit somebody and they die. That separate crime is elevated in the charges. I don't know how you could elevate charges beyond stealing an election, successfully stealing an election. But once he stole that election, George W. Bush lied to us about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction and committed us to 2 decades of war. I don't want to see Michelle Obama hugging him, I guess. And I hope before the sand runs out of W's hourglass that he is in a cell because it's a new America and we don't put up with this nonsense.
Well, the state Supreme Court, the Florida Supreme Court, orders a recount. And all across the state, they're starting to recount the votes. And it's starting to look like that recount might indicate that Al Gore actually won more votes. And so Roger Stone and his buddies go down there with this program called Stop the Steal. and start pounding on the windows of the place in Miami where they're counting the vote. Right-wing radio hosts all across the country get into it, say it's Gore Loser Man, making fun of Joe Lieberman's last name.
Do you recall?
And finally,
in the earlier stream, how I said, it really seems to me like there's a group of people who go around and advise right-wing lunatics on how to carry out right-wing lunatic coups. Roger Stone, pounding on the doors, saying, "Stop the steal." They didn't even change their phrase, much less their technique. How many places around our country had that happening? They were saying, "Stop the steal, keep counting those votes." And also, in other places where Trump was ahead, "Stop the steal, stop counting those votes." Roger Stone, Gulag.
George W. Bush sues at the Supreme Court. And Anthony Scalia, in his, concurring opinion, it was Rehnquist who wrote the opinion, 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court stopped the recount. They overruled, in violation of the Ninth Amendment, or the 10th Amendment, States' Rights Amendment, 10th Amendment. They overruled the Florida Supreme Court, which has never been done before, at least not in this way. And the United States Supreme Court said, no, we're just going to let George W. Bush get installed as president. Because Scalia wrote, and I quote, "The counting of votes does, in my view, threaten irreparable harm to George W. Bush and to the country by casting a cloud upon what Bush claims to be the legitimacy of his election." This was their rationale.
His rationale was literally, Bush won because he says he won. Oligarchy.
So Bush gets installed by a bunch of corrupt cronies on the U.S. Supreme Court, and then to get himself reelected in 2004, well, he told his biographer, Mickey Herskowitz, the guy that his parents hired to write his autobiography, A Charge to Keep, in 1999. In 1999, he tells his biographer, and this is coming out of the 360 shot, told him exactly what he was going to do if he got elected in 2000.
First of all, this is the kind of guy that has a biographer before he's president. I realize he had done other things before then, but come on.
As a matter of fact, in interviews in 1999 with respected journalists and longtime Bush family friend Mickey Herskowitz,
this is Cindy Sheehan,
then Governor George Bush stated, "One of the keys to being seen as a great leader is to be seen as commander-in-chief. My father had all this political capital built up when he drove the Iraqis out of Kuwait, and he wasted it. If I have a chance to invade, if I had that much capital, I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to get everything passed that I want to get passed, and I'm going to have a successful presidency," end quote.
So then Bush and Cheney, whose Halliburton company was failing at that time, he desperately needed some military contracts, lied us into the war in Iraq. So that's treason number 3. And then now, of course, we've got Trump. His first week in office, he handed an Israeli spy off to the Russian. The Russian ambassador was in his office. Here's this guy's name. And committed, I mean, you know all the other treasons that Trump committed. So that's 4 treasonous Republican presidents. 4 of them.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.
Not anymore. Now it's wicked. I mean, that family, the Bushes, they're George W. Bush was talking about attacking another country in the way I would expect outdoorsmen, hobbyist hunters to talk about bagging a bigger stag than Dad shot. That's how casually he was talking about it. That's how he was apparently viewing human beings' lives in Iraq. If I get a chance, I'm going to take it. People died. There's someone who doesn't really remember their father. There's someone who misses his wife. There's someone who cries themselves to sleep every night because they can't quite remember what their children's face looked like because George W. Bush killed their kids by invading their country. Michelle Obama's taken candies from him. Isn't that sweet? We need to take these people every bit as seriously as history will demand. Any of us who put up with Ellen hanging out with George W. Bush or Donald Trump not getting charged with everything we can prove that he did. Any of us that put up with that will be seen as complicit and will deserve it. You want to know what you can do? We are getting the cultural ball rolling here. I'll tell you, I felt this way about Bush. I didn't know all the specifics, but I did know he lied about Iraq. I did know Florida was real suspicious. I felt this way about Bush for a long time, and I didn't think it was possible in my lifetime that America would wake up enough to actually consider holding him responsible. And Donald Trump gave us a gift by being so incompetent at this grift while still recognizing what it was. Enough to try to play the game. That we are paying attention now. We have been given no choice. If we want to hold our heads high on the world stage, we've been given no choice but to seek criminal charges against this guy. That's how blatant he was. In a country where you can have your brother give you the election and a Supreme Court write in their official ruling for all history to see, we're giving this to this guy because he says it. He says so. So he's our president now. In a country where that blatantly the corruption can happen, Donald Trump forced the hand of the Justice Department. Riled up you and me and all kinds of other decent human beings so much that there was no choice but for the Justice Department to act. We need, in addition to getting a charge is a great start. Celebrate this moment, by the way. We're all on indictment watch right now, and for this first indictment, F it. We're going to have a big party. We are going to have a giant, thank you. You know what? That's the pain train. Pain train's coming for Donald Trump. When the indictment is announced, whenever that is, we are going to start a mega stream full of fun to do. Just to celebrate, because it's important to keep our energy up, and it will be history. And it will be sad as well as happy, because sad that it was necessary. But we are going to be required to keep it going after that. Not being satisfied with one indictment. Everything. And all the accomplices. And if it should be that the vast majority of the Republican Party winds up in a jail cell, you just saw what this party's leadership has been. Don't let it surprise you. I started off pitching that ban any party with an insurrectionist in it in your state as like a joke retort to the Florida bill that was trying to boot the Democrats. Very quickly became not a joke. In fact, it's a mercy. It's a chance to let the Republicans clean house themselves. Because if we do keep this pressure up, if you can get the 5 outstanding state AGs in Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, if we can get them to actually pursue state charges, thereby also getting all the people in the Republican Party in their state on the hook for this as well, for their participation in this. I'm not saying every single person in the Republican Party in their state. I'm saying the members of the Republican Party in their state that participated. The false electors, the people that coordinated between them and Giuliani, the people that handed the messages back and forth. If we start grabbing these people, we actually are going to clean house. We actually are going to develop a taste for this. We're going to develop prosecutors who have an expertise in prosecuting powerful people. And it won't be so crazy when we turn to George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, when we look back to Roger Stone, all of them, all of these villains that we have simply allowed to get away with villainy. It won't be so crazy when we see in the papers that they are one of the indictments, because guess what? They've had it coming for a long time. Link in the description. If you are in one of those states, get the ball rolling. I didn't put in the general DOJ link this time because it's not necessary. You're not in one of those states. Relax. But don't forget, the long road ahead, but the game is a hell of a lot less tiring when you're winning. And we are about to score big, it would seem. Starting, but by no means ending, with an indictment for Donald J. Trump in the great state of New York. Okay. I'm going to read some comments, and then it's time for that 4-day work week. Holy Christ. Franny P says, Nixon killed my dad in Vietnam. I'm sorry. Genuinely. I'm sorry. There is no revenge that can be taken against the man. But you're damn right that we can take revenge against the system that allowed him to behave that way. And we will. Lauren St. Laurent says there's this great book, Reign of Terror, on the effect of the Iraq invasion and war on terror. It's Reign of Terror by Spencer Ackerman. Get your library to order it. I will. Thank you. Hopefully it's on Audible. I'll give it a listen if possible. Wireless Mike says, I wish we could run them all up. I wish we could round them all up and drop them on an island together. Let them fight each other for the last coconut. Good Lord. Right? Yeah, wholeheartedly agreed. Okay, so a little bit ago, we talked about how a study had come out in England where a 4-day work week didn't only make workers happier. It didn't only make it less expensive to run the companies that implemented this. It increased it increased employee productivity. According to that study, which was done across multiple companies, there is literally no reason not to implement a 4-day work week. It's what led into the whole, what kind of a future do we work towards? And what is halfway in between then and now look like? Because when you work too much with excellent tools that get the job done quicker than 40 hours, then you're working against your own tools. It may surprise you to hear that the United States of America is looking at a 4-day work week. Here is the Young Turks talking about a bill, and don't get excited because it's not going to pass, but it's a bill, nonetheless, that has been discussed in the House of Representatives to give the United States a 4-day work week. Here it is.
Check out this tweet from Congressman Mark Takano. He tweeted this: "The data is in and the time is now to modernize work culture for the better. I'm reintroducing the 32-hour Work Week Act to allow workers to begin reclaiming their time and their lives with no loss of pay." My God, that sounds so sweet and so wonderful. But of course, as we know, capitalism is king, so I don't know how far I was going to go. But anyway, Representative Mark Takano, who represents California's 39th district, has introduced his 32-hour Work Week Act to Congress, which, if passed, would officially reduce the standard definition of the work week from 40 hours to 32 hours by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act. This per CNBC. His proposal would mandate overtime pay for any work done after 32 hours, which would encourage businesses to either pay workers more for longer hours or shorten their week and hire more people. The bill applies to non-exempt workers who typically work hourly jobs across leisure and hospitality, transportation, construction, manufacturing, wholesale, and retail trade.
Essentially, lowering that standard work week that we have of 40 hours down to 32. In other words, a 4-day work week. Amazing. In the United States of America. Very low lows, no doubt, in this era. But high highs, good God.
The serious conversations about the reduced work week are happening for white-collar professions. What my bill will do is spur conversation about how we can democratize this norm to other sectors of the workforce so everyone benefits. And I love that idea because, as we know, those white-collar jobs tend to benefit the most when it comes to flexibility, as we saw during the pandemic, when not everybody could work from home, but those who are already in certain professions had not only the economic ability, but also had various technological abilities already in store, and that just made it easily accessible when everyone should be able to access the opportunities. But of course, not everybody's on board as far as this goes. Critics oppose the legislation for its one-size-fits-all approach, writes Emily Dickens, Chief of Staff and Head of Government Affairs at SHRM Sherm. Dickens writes that a similar bill could exacerbate staffing shortages, raise labor costs, and make life more difficult for HR professionals and businesses struggling to recover.
Make life more difficult for human resources. Oh, I'd love to give you a whole day off every week. I would. I mean, the science says that you are working an entire extra day that you don't have to. But there's so much paperwork. I don't give a goose fuck. Fill out that paperwork. If you're a struggling business, ask for a loan. Or just effing fail. Go out of business. I don't give about your business. Not if all of America has to suffer so that you can exist. I don't care.
the worst days of the pandemic. I'm okay with whatever difficulties will be put in there because there are so many benefits to implementing a 4-day work week, which have been evidenced through many studies that showed real benefits to businesses and individuals. For example, nearly 3,000 UK workers at 61 companies recently completed a 6-month pilot of the shortened week run by nonprofit 4-day week global. Businesses reported improved productivity, revenue, morale, and team culture, whereas individuals saw benefits from their finances, health, and relationships.
I just want to stress that because in America, productivity is the be-all, end-all. Improved productivity. Working 1 day less and improved productivity. But they don't want to fill out the paperwork here in America, apparently. We should really accept in our hearts that the people who lead us right now don't have not even our best interests in mind. They don't have our interests at all in mind. To them, the people who are wealthy and powerful, to them, our only value is not as human beings. It's as a vote. We need to leverage that value and not just leverage it once every 4 years, not just leverage it once every 2 years, but at a minimum, twice every 2 years, once in the primary, once in the general, and telegraph to them what we're planning on doing and why we're planning on doing it. Because if we don't do that, then we work an extra day every week of our lives forever. Forever. This goes on until we insist that we will have it no more.
More than 900 workers across 33 businesses in the US and Ireland ran through the same program last year, and none of them are going back to a 5-day model. Indeed, the research is there, but similar to the fact that desegregating your workplace in terms of race, gender, ethnicity, religion, all of those biases that keep people at bay, desegregating also provides an opportunity to have more profits. You're going to show greater productivity, lower turnover. People are more invested in their work and they do better. That research has been on the table for years. Yet so many organizations stay segregated. So just because we do have research out there that the 4-day work week is beneficial, and I do not doubt that it would be so much more beneficial to people's lives, I still don't think that our government and our leadership would allow that to come to pass because we are not a progressive nation. I hate to be negative, but no, capitalism is king and keeping us enslaved is the win as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. There were 2 reasons I wanted to show you this. Number 1, kudos to the damage report and TYT. I hadn't been aware that this bill was introduced. Great job, team. Reason number 2, this right here. We need to end this whole part of the segment. We're going to watch it because it's important that we hear it. We need to stop defeating ourselves. We do so much of the bad guys' work for them. Now, TYT is a different channel than what this is. I'm not saying they necessarily have to provide the solution. But what you should not do, respectfully I say this to, I'm blanking on her name, and Alonzo Bowden. What you should not do is put in effort to convince people that nothing can be done. Because there is absolutely things that can be done. There is value, more importantly, in the fight. We gain things through struggle. And this is an important struggle to have. So I'm going to let him talk, but then I'm going to come back with what you can do. And it's very specific. And it involves a lady from North Carolina.
Concerned. Alonzo, what are your thoughts?
Wow, is this congressman an optimist or what? A 32-hour work week? You know, you broke it down that where they talked about who would the 32-hour work week benefit? The hourly workers. Who gets it now? The white collar workers. They're not going to do anything to benefit the hourly workers, and a Republican Congress is not going to help labor. It has been shown.
Okay. Just the way he let off there, like, wow, what an optimist this guy is. What do you want to? You want to high five each other? Yeah. We shouldn't try to do anything. Yeah. Let's just sit on our asses and complain until we die. Terrible, Alonzo. I don't blame you for doomerism. It's a sad time, but that attitude is hot trash. And as a fan of that guy in particular, I generally enjoy watching him. It bums me out to see him, by the way, more and more these days, coming up with those takes. I'm just saying, don't let him bum you out, because there's absolutely ways we can not only make this more likely to happen, but make this more likely to happen in the future, but gain things in the struggle right now. Right now. But step one, don't listen to the second half of this video. I just want you to listen to it. But don't follow their attitude here, because it's the wrong attitude.
That people, it's almost like you get more done in less time because you're not so tired. You know, it's like when you have work 10, 12, 14 hours a day.
I'll even go back so I can say that sentence unbroken. That's passion coming from me right now. It's not anger at him. That's not the bad guy, for the record. Not the bad guy. But I do passionately disagree with him because they did such a good job of introducing this. Okay, I'm going to let
tired. You know, it's like when you have work 10, 12, 14 hours a day. Those last few hours, you're not really getting anything done because you're exhausted. Mm-hmm. So this could work. Not a chance. Not a chance of this happening. 32-hour work week. Now, I will tell you, years ago, I had a job where it was 4 on, 4 off. You worked 10 hours a day for 4 days, then you got 4 days off. And every 4 days, it was like, I'm going on vacation. It's kind of nice. And you still did your 40 hours. Amazing. But no, not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Not a chance. Yeah. And I'm not even being negative. I live in the United States of America. I'm just,
Yeah, no, we know how it works. The fact is that keeping us laboring, whether it's productive or not, is for some reason just our jam. We really like to oppress people and keep people in the dark and dumb.
It's like this fake thing of, there's a shortage of workers and people don't want to work. No, it's not that people don't want to work. People want to get paid. That's all.
Right.
Pay them fairly. People will be glad 100%. To come to work. And they're upset because during the pandemic, people learned, hey, my time and my life has a value. I shouldn't be at work all this time for no money at all. And people refuse to come back. And now they're all upset. It's like, no, if you pay them, there is no shortage of workers.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism.
Oh, we are having a hell of a tech day. Okay. So I went off on him a little bit there. I already feel bad about it. But it's very important to me that you don't think that there's nothing we can do, that you don't let it end there. That was a very brave bill for that congressman to representative. Good Lord. 2 streams a day, folks. That was a very brave bill to introduce. In an environment where people get called socialist for anything, I'm of the belief that should give you a pass to just do whatever legislation you want because you're going to take heat for it no matter what. But it's not the common belief. It's certainly not the common belief in Washington. So it was brave for that person to put forward a genuinely progressive bill. First of all, you can write them and thank them. Second of all, let me give you the specifics of where we have the biggest problem with this bill right now. Why, specifically, the mechanics of why it won't be voted on. Christ. All right, we're going to go straight to the article. From Nexstar Digital, Ali Martichow. The bill would need to pass out of the House Education and the Workforce Committee to advance toward becoming law. So it needs to get out of a committee first that this guy is in. Takano, a Democrat, is a member of the committee. The committee's chair is Republican Virginia Foxx of North Carolina, who signaled she's not a fan of the top-down legislation. I'm going to be real with you up front. Is this bill going to pass this time? No, it is not. Imagine something for a moment. You have a goal. You need to get 10 blocks that away in 20 minutes. You're in a busy city. You're on vacation. 10 blocks that way, 20 minutes. You decide you're going to walk there. Seems logical. You get a little map, and you're walking there. But traffic is such that you keep having to stop and wait. For whatever reason, you find that traffic moving faster than people in the city you're visiting. Does that mean it has now become impossible for you to get to your destination at the time you want it? No. It means you have to change your tactics. Put your hand up. Flag a cab. Cab takes you there. You started off meaning to walk there. You adjusted to the obstacles in the field. Still accomplished your objective. That is how we need to look at these things. We don't give up as soon as we see an obstacle. We surmount it. Or we turn it to our advantage. What do we know about this bill? It is absolutely not going to pass. It's being introduced in the House. It's being introduced by a committee, first and foremost, that it has to get out of. And then it needs to be voted on in the House. There is absolutely no chance that the House will approve this. Fine. Let's turn that to our advantage. All the folks that wouldn't actually want this thing to pass don't have to worry about that because they know we will never convince enough of them to vote for it. Which means they can feel safe voting for it because it's going to not pass. There's no way even most Democrats would vote for it. So they don't have to worry about tossing their vote in for it. Say, yeah, I guess I'm for this. Why would they want to? Well, Maybe because a bunch of their constituents want to see them do that. Maybe because they got flooded with emails saying that they want their vote to be for that bill. This lady who's holding it up, Miss Fox, Virginia Fox of North Carolina, the chair of the committee, she does not have to worry about this bill actually getting passed. But she is the main obstacle to it right now. That has the disadvantage of meaning we must sway her if anything is going to happen here. However, it has the added benefit of narrowing our target right down. So now, we don't need to spread out our efforts across the whole of Congress, the whole of the House anyway. We focus them on one person, Virginia Fox of North Carolina. Wouldn't you know it? Contact information is in the description of this very video. If you were inclined, like your old pal Jake was a little bit earlier, you could write her and say, I want my representative. I want my representative to speak for this bill, to speak for me on behalf of this bill. I want you to give my representative the opportunity to support the bill. The benefit of that will be making her look like a populist, or at the very least, making the flood of emails stop. If she still doesn't do it, which is likely, we will have created pressure on her. We will have created rumors around the office. We will have hopefully sent simultaneous emails to our specific representatives saying, I just wrote Virginia Fox saying, I want you to be able to vote on this bill. I want you the next time you speak in Congress to mention this bill and to say that you're supposed to have a vote because your constituents demand it. How many are we going to get? Are we going to get 30 members of the House? No. Are we going to get 10? Nope. We could get 2. 3. I could see 4. They're not risking anything. What's it matter? It's not going to pass. Why not demand it come up for a vote? We might get a surprise one. Remember, Matt Gaetz doesn't take corporate PAC money. It happens to be because he can't, because they won't touch him with a 10-foot pole. But he turned that around and made that into something he campaigns on as a populist. For the record, he's a sex trafficker. He belongs in prison. But that only speaks to the strength of this. We can use the fact that they are a bunch of slimy, conniving scum to our advantage. We can use the fact that this bill won't pass to our advantage. We can say, we can force, or at least pressure, various constituents. If we happen to get 2 people in the House to just come out on the floor and say, why isn't this bill being given to us to talk about, at least to vote on behalf of our constituents? If we can just have that happen and no other action at all, there is a story now for the media to talk about. Bipartisan support for... Will it work? Probably not. What does it cost us to try? 2 emails. At the cost of 2 emails, you might be able to start a national story about a bipartisan support for a 32-hour work week. For 2 emails. How much you care about it might end up being how many times you write these emails. If nothing else, it's great training for us, learning how to do this, making this a habit, and for them. It's a shot across the bow to tell them we see you, we know what you're doing, we expect different from here on out. And it's collective pressure. It's motivation. The next young gun, as they say. What was the I don't remember what the McCarthy's crew was originally called. Let's say the next squad. There's another political group. The next squad that wants to make a name for themselves knows that this is an issue people care about then. If you accept defeat, you create defeat. Nobody on earth has more motivation to lessen the load than the person carrying it. We are carrying an unreasonable amount of work on our shoulders. Let's harness that. If you want to increase, by the way, the odds that we actually will get a conversion out of this, the odds that we actually will pressure Virginia Fox or any one of our representatives, also link in the description. Share that little chunk of the description on social media. Hell, if you want to get ballsy, share this clip on social media. But more importantly, share that information on social media. Share it with your friends. It's just writing a couple of emails, but the potential it has to help people is huge. I'm going to write mine. I hope you'll write yours. And I hope that America has it easier as a result. Or at the very least, a lady on the Education and Workforce Committee sweats a little, knowing that we're angry at her. Let's read some of those comments. Wireless Mike says, Jon Stewart did a great bit about inflation and how the Fed strangles labor. His interview with Larry Summers was brutal, and I loved it. I got to check that out. Yes, Lauren St. Laurent. Exactly. The problem with doomerism is it ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yes, that's it exactly. And I understand why the left is so prone to it. But we truly have entered into a new era. And we have the ability to waste it, and I hope we don't. In fact, I'm going to insist we don't. And with folks like you here, I'm confident that we will not waste it. Yeah. Wireless Mike says, it's part of the reason why nobody has the time or energy to get more involved in civic engagement. It's part of the design. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It is, I don't think it is at all a mistake that we are as tired as we are, as angry at people of the same economic level as we are. I don't think there was a design by like a group of people with an evil scientist. I just think as your boss notices that there's less lip from tired employees, they are heartlessly willing to say, let's sign them up for another 4 hours and give them a pay cut. Yes, says Lauren St. Laurent. Talk to your Lauren St. Laurent. Yes, talk to your rep, but also the people in your voting district. 100%. And he says yes. I keep saying he. They say Lauren St. Laurent says yes, as long as Gates, Santos, and company are there, might as well use them for something good. Absolutely. Wireless Mike and I agree with you 100%. Yes, sir. All right. let's do a palate cleanser. There was a chewing out by Brian Tyler Cohen that was glorious. As someone who loves Impossible Meat myself, that's the fake meat that tastes vaguely like the real thing. I hear this stuff all the time, where a vegetarian item will be introduced on a menu, and a bunch of people complain about it as though something has been taken away. Something set off Brian Tyler Cohen because he put it into words better than it's ever even appeared in my head. Here he is.
All right, take a look at this. People are vowing they'll never go back to Cracker Barrel after the chain added vegan sausage to its menus. For any foreigners wondering what politics is like in the US, Cracker Barrel is the perfect microcosm. The perfect microcosm. Because here's Cracker Barrel not taking anything away, but simply adding a meatless option for those who want it. And the people who've lost nothing are so offended at the prospect of other people being convenienced that they are threatening to never go back. That is the conservative movement in a nutshell.
100%. 100%. You can't have that thing. I don't like it. What? Completely. Literally with this and with every other thing. That's how she works.
Here's a thought for conservatives. If you don't want an abortion, don't get an abortion. If you don't want a gay marriage, don't get gay married. And if you don't want an Impossible sausage from Cracker Barrel, don't get an Impossible sausage from Cracker Barrel. But why should nobody be able to eat an Impossible sausage from Cracker Barrel? Like, not for nothing, but if your views are so fragile that the mere existence of other people with different behaviors and beliefs feels threatening to you, then that's not their problem, it's yours.
Knocked it directly out of the park. Brian Tyler Cohen, ladies and gentlemen. Every single thing we talked about today, every single thing, gets made easier by doing just one thing. If you want the DOJ to take corruption seriously, there's one thing you can do that will make everything else you do less of a schlep. If you want a 32-hour work week to have a reasonable chance of passing, if you want the memory of the fight this time to be worth a damn next time, there's one thing you can do. If you want sane people running the country, genuinely working for your benefit, there's one thing you can do to make that more likely, to make all their efforts more likely to result in an actual favorable situation. You vote in primaries. Vote in primaries that pushes candidates in the direction you need them to be. Yes, you always hear about tacking towards the center in the general. Okay, but how much do they tack? How much do they have to change their opinions or risk looking like a flip-flopper? When they see the energy on the side of a party that has a vast primary voting bloc, even the people on the other side of the aisle, the centrists who wear a different colored hat, even they get swayed a little bit. Even if they know they'll never get those voters, they also know they don't want to anger those voters. It matters. It's tremendously important. It is the strength of a political movement measured. Vote in primaries. Yes, vote in the general. By God, vote in the general. But don't forget to vote in primaries. Every political action you can find the energy to take, and I'm going to do my best to make it as easy as possible because I know you're tired. Lord knows I know you're tired. But every political action you can find the strength to take makes us all stronger. We don't all have to be Hercules. We can be Big Jim. Put in a little bit of work a lot of the time, and you will find some of these obstacles are absolutely surmountable. And some of these fights, which seem like they've been going on forever and will never end in a victory, some of these fights will one day suddenly just be won. If we can get, and it's plausible this time around, if we can get the presidency, the House, the Senate, we can get all of those in 2024. We can utterly reshape America. And it's long overdue. Lauren St. Laurent says, Bo, the Fifth Column did a vid on that a few months ago. Ooh, I'm going to have a gander. He says, my sausage, my choice. Oh, you're racking up points in my internal commenter clock. Well done, Lauren St. Laurent. My sausage, my choice indeed. Folks, I have had a blast hanging out with you tonight. It's time to chop up the episode, feed the algorithm. If you enjoyed the stream, if you think it's of value, I hope you'll give it a like and consider giving it a subscribe if you haven't already. Tell your friends about it. I think this right, Chow, is a community worth growing, and I'm gonna put in a yeoman's effort to make that happen. I hope you'll help me out. Tell your friends about it. And I'll even try to get good at lining up the exit correctly. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for what you can do. My name's Jake.